All right.
The Voice 17104.com. This is Zanetta Wingfield, and you're listening to The Voice 17104.com. The Voice 17104.com.
Welcome, my brothers and sisters, to the Richard James Show on 17104, The Voice. Greetings, my friends, and salutations. Welcome to the Richard James Show. We have had a wonderful, wonderful time during the 4th of July weekend. Corn Liquors, and a brother, I think his name was Walker, came and presented a beautiful show for us, celebrating the blues. I think that was a wonderful, wonderful rendition. One thing is authentic and is culturally American. And we had a gentleman came all the way up from Mississippi to celebrate the blues. Well, today we're going to go political. We're going to take a look at the whole spectrum of not only how government is being run, but how society is coming up and coming through and dealing with certain principles. Let me just start off. I'm going to lift up one gentleman that you may or may not know, but who has obtained a national reputation and fighting the fight for justice and equality, that kind of thing. His name is Robert Woodson. Who is Robert Woodson? You know, we have in our society a political left and a political right. And early on in my development, I've always leaned, and I guess they would say I lean heavily toward the so-called political left, but not entrapped in either one. And Robert Woodson, just to give you a little background, grew up in the city of Philadelphia. He attended and graduated from Cheney State University and got his master's degree from the same school that my wife got hers from. He got a master's degree in social work from the University of Pennsylvania. So he's a well-educated man. Didn't grow up as an elitist, didn't grow up as a man who had a whole lot of money. He grew up in poverty, same as I did. And we wanted to deal with problems in our neighborhood. And I grew up poor. To be specific, I was poor, poor working class. And my father was a hard working man. As you say, John Henry was a steel driving man. Well, my father was a nail driving man. And my dad worked 2 jobs consistently. When my father was able to obtain these positions, I never known him to have one job. My father went to school, technical school, and with the help of my mother, he learned to be a welder. He ultimately became a first-class welder and spent over 30 years as a first-class welder. But he also learned carpentry. So double time. My father put in everything he had. And by the way, he had a 2nd grade education. So he would sit down at night and study his books with the help of my mother. And the both of them would work together to get through. But we grew up, and let me be specific where I'm at. Where I grew up, racism was abound. Discrimination was abound. And there were organizations that were set up to work against racism. One such organization was the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And we fought to end racism and discrimination. And many of the companies like Chester, now let me just go back a little bit. I was born in Thomasville, Georgia. And at the age of 4, I was 4. My older brother Sam was 6. And Curtis, I think Curtis was maybe, my God, he must have been 2 years old. He was. He was a baby. And we moved up to the industrial city of Chester, Pennsylvania. And I think it was 1945. I'm pretty sure it was 1945 when we made that tremendous move. And we encountered all kinds of issues and all kinds of problems in Chester. And racism and discrimination was a very, very strong part of it. And so my father always wanted us to fight against racism. So we joined the NAACP Youth Council. And at the time I joined, the chapter president for the city of Chester was Alfreda Charlton, who later became Alfreda Charlton Reed. She was the head of that organization. And so we joined that organization to fight against racism and discrimination. And as a matter of fact, I've had Frida Charlton Reed on my show. I have a lot of respect for that young lady and the leadership that she presented. So another gentleman who also came to Chester to work on civil rights at the neighborhood house was a gentleman by the name of Robert Woodson. The same gentleman that we're going to lift up, we're going to speak to and listen to today. Now, on some issues, when I've been listening to some of his recent speeches, well, first of all, he's on a national stage. People all over this country are aware of the Woodson neighborhood organization. And some of the same things that we did when we were younger, he's lifting up now. And I listen to his philosophy. He's more to the right. And I think I lean more to the left. He's conservative. But I'm listening to what he said, and he really believes in self-help. He believes that we can lift up ourselves and that we should not be dependent on other people to do it for us. Now, in this context, I agree with him that we cannot depend on our enemy to be our friend. And another thing that he doesn't want us to do, and I agree with him on that, we cannot blame other people. All of our injustice, all of our problems, all of our issues did not come from the white race. And I personally believe in lifting up unity and people working together. Let me say that again. I believe in unity. I believe in whites, blacks, Asians pulling together. Ethnocentric? Yes, I am. I am very, very much agreed that we need to do things for ourselves. I believe in terms, you should also know our history. that we should know about our ancestry in terms of Africa, the things that we've done over a period of time. But self-help, doing it for ourselves, not blaming everything on race. I agree with it. Also, but there's some things I agree with that they don't agree with, and I don't think, and neither does my old friend Robert Woodson. I do believe in reparations. I believe that if you took it away from me, then you ought to give it back. I believe in reparations. And so does most people. Asians receive reparations. European, the Great Marshall Plan received reparations. And if it's good for the goose, then it's good for the gander. Let's talk about it. And because of the liberals, or the right, or the left-leaning individuals lift up the whole idea of reparations, then the right goes the other way. Well, I'm going straight forward. You took my years and years and years and years of experience. You took my, you enslaved me. There was a middle passage in which millions of individuals were enslaved and brought across the sea as laborers. They work as slave laborers. And you say that we don't deserve to get the pay for our labor? Is that what you're saying? Then you're an idiot. That's what I hear about the right wing. They're leaning so hard to get the support of this right wing individuals. They're not looking at the total picture. And not only slavery. Let me give you a little example. I may have mentioned it before. My grandfather, Richard C. James I, was a farmer. And he had, according to the information that we have received, over 150 acres of land. That land was stolen from my grandmother, Caroline Barnes. Taken. You don't think she should get her land back? Why shouldn't she? Why? Because the Klan said that she doesn't deserve it? She does deserve it. She's earned it. It's her land. I believe in reparations. Now let's take a look at public accommodation. Let's look at this whole thing of democracy, in which we work hard and we pay into a fund they call Social Security. We're inheritance. And so you want to destroy Social Security after years and years of investment? I don't agree with that. Franklin Delano Roosevelt created public housing, created Social Security in order to make sure that the masses of people were taken care of. He did a great job. I'm saying that the United States of America is a mixture of both, shall we say, democracy and some social programs. And this whole right-wing theory that anything social is wrong is ridiculous. So reparations, in other words, return it. Japanese Americans were placed in concentration camps. We mentioned that over and over again. Ultimately, they did get some money back. Some things, but their businesses have been taken away from them. They were forced into concentration camps. And they fought in segregated units during World War II. Nothing wrong about that. Self-help is important. There's nothing more important than what we do for ourselves. Because then we learn how to do it for ourselves. We learn how to build for ourselves. We learn how to make it work for ourselves. I heavily believe at this point in reparations. And we got individuals throughout the country that began to lift up that whole issue of reparations. Now, the whole thing of busing, let's talk about busing. I'm gonna be honest with you, I never did like busing. But what I did not like also is segregation. To take a child and bus him miles away from his neighborhood, I never thought was a great idea. But also, to segregate a child, put them in an inferior school, inferior in terms of the bricks, in terms of the books, in terms of the material, in terms of the resources, it's wrong. Now, some of the schools I went to, they weren't bad because they were Black. They were, in fact, they were quite wonderful. I had some of the best teachers that money could buy. But, and I never was bused. Thank God for that. Never was. My school was only about less than a mile from where I went, and I walked in rain, sleet, and snow. But to get on a bus, no, I don't believe in that. Do I believe in integration? Yet, diversity. I don't call it integration, I call it diversity. In other words, the mixing of the races, working together, getting to know each other, learning together, studying together, and also just rubbing shoulders, finding out about the other person's culture. What do they eat? Do things together. Do not deny equal opportunity or employment to anyone, whether they be Black or white. You hear me? Do not deny equal opportunity employment to Black or white. And one thing, Chester was a totally segregated town. Our public housing that we got developed by Roosevelt was segregated. It was segregated. White folks live in a far part of town, and we live in another part of town. But I want you to listen to this lifting up conservative point of view, but there are also some very positive things that we can learn. Okay, I have a video I want you to take a look at. Okay, Glenn Show. Take care. Let's go.
Hello, this is Glenn Lowry. This is The Glenn Show. We're at Substack.com and at my YouTube channel, Glenn Lowry Show. Every week, every other week with John McWhorter. This week, my guests are Robert Woodson, who is the founder and president of the Woodson Center in Washington, D.C., and Sylvia Bennett Stone, who is the chairman or director of Voices of Black Mothers United, which is an initiative that is housed within the Woodson Center. I'm especially happy to welcome Bob and Sylvia back to The Glenn Show. And I just want to state that The Glenn Show, you contributors out there who are interested in supporting us, has pledged 10% of its net proceeds as a tithe to support the work that goes on through the Woodson Center, including Sylvia's project, Voices of Black Mothers United. So, welcome.
Thank you.
Be here, Glenn.
Yeah. So, Bob, tell us about the Woodson Center again.
The Woodson Center is a national not-for-profit that I founded 40 years ago in Washington, D.C., and it really helps low-income grassroots leaders in 39 states. There are about 2,500 of them. And we help them to design and run programs to address poverty, crime reduction, small enterprise. In other words, we help low-income leaders to redevelop their community from the inside out. We look at them as social entrepreneurs. And we, as I said, 80% of my closest friends and the people we serve have letters in front of their names, not behind their names.
How long have you been in operation?
40 years.
40 years
Yes.
of good works with grassroots organization, empowering people to take their problems into their own hands and to make some progress.
Yes. We run to people everyone runs away from.
And Sylvia,
Yes.
Voices of Black Mothers United. What are you all up to?
Oh my God. First of all, thank you for having me back again. We have been just finished a 5-state tour. Victims' Rights Week was a national initiative of DOJ that ran from April 24th through April the 30th. Voices of Black Mothers United did 5 different events to highlight and to celebrate the survivors of victims of violence in 5 different states. We started out in Alabama and went to Mississippi, Tennessee, Cleveland, Ohio, and Racine, Wisconsin. And each of the states and the cities, rather, did their own creative event to bring together law enforcement and the community in terms of engaging the two for the better good of the community and bringing about solutions for safety. So it was just phenomenal. In each city, one city, we did a basketball game that included law enforcement, community leaders, members of the school board superintendent's office, as well as kids within the community or parents within the community. And they engage in a fun game of basketball that we chose to call it Bigger Than Basketball, because the conversation was more. And during the halftime, we actually had a panel to where there was the exchange of what's happening and how to better Racine, Wisconsin. Those are the things that we've been doing
Now,
on the ground.
Excuse me, Bob. You call yourselves Voices of Black Mothers United.
We are.
Why?
Okay,
Have
so
you explained your situation, why we got started? Yeah.
what happened, I was a community affiliate of the Woodson Center since 2006. And in 2004, my daughter was killed. She was at a gas station. The bullet went through her body, stopped in the heart of her girlfriend. Both girls died. I dropped off the scene for some years. And when I came back to the communication hub of the Woodson Center, Mr. Woodson was, where you've been, you know, and I shared, and I also shared the frustration that no one wants to hear about a Black child dying in the community. And Mr. Woodson said, well, you know what? I find that to be a problem. You know, everyone wants to jump up and down and hear about Black Lives Matter and the platform of defund the police because it's something negative. People want to hang on to something negative, but we're going to give them something positive to hang on to because there was not an alternative to that. So Mr. Woodson gave Black mothers a voice nationally to be heard.
We provided a platform, Glenn, as we always do. That everybody talks about people in these communities. No one talks to them to ask them what's important to them. Black Lives Matter and others say, we need to defund the police. Well, 80% of Black Americans living in these communities are against defund the police. They want more police. Black Lives Matter and others say that racism is the biggest problem facing Black America. 60% of Blacks polls said that it's not the case. And so some of these mothers, when they spoke out and said that we need to address the enemy within, we are killing our children, not white police. Well, actually, some Black Lives Matter people attacked these mothers and said, you're off message. And so I said, wait a minute, they need to be speaking for themselves. And so I told Sylvia, why don't we reach out? So far, I mean, it spread like thousands. So now we have how many chapters and how many?
22 states and thousands of mothers. And a lot of these mothers have their own organizations where they've actually took the step to turn their pain into purpose. They just needed direction of what to do on the ground and how to help on the ground. And that's what we've been doing.
There's one study, I'm sorry, Glenn, that shows that 35% of these moms end up dying 5 years after they lose a child. And so what Sylvia does is counsel many of these women in the early stages of losing a child. And I, just last week or so, she talked a mom out of suicide, had her on the phone, and had her husband, call the police. And so she and other moms are reaching out to provide that kind of comfort. But they're also engaged in, as she said, other activities to prevent crime. We will actually have moms embedded with homicide units so that they respond and go to a site of a homicide, because that's where a lot of drama occurs, where a lot of anger gets expressed towards the police. So in some cases, they even change the way they process a murder scene so that they don't leave a child laying there for hours while they investigate. But this was all because of the input from the moms who work with Rodney Monroe, who's a former chief of police, who's working now in a very creative way. So we really are working with these moms because they have some exciting, innovative ways to heal the hearts of these moms, but also healing the community and working towards preventing violence.
Sylvia, I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Crystal Joy, that was your baby's name.
Crystal Joy. It was crystal clear that she was going to be a joy to the world.
So what we have here in the face of the awful tragedy of losing a child to violence, to gun violence or other, is a constructive response from the victims, the surviving victims, to take matters to the extent that they can into their own hands and to try to move forward positively. You're working with police in some of these cities.
It's an absolute must. Police is very much a part of the equation in order to reduce the violence. There's, like Mr. Woodson was saying, 80% of the community members want more police. They want sensible policing in their communities. Defund the police is not an option. When you work with the police and you talk about what's happening and what's going on within your community, what you need out of a peace officer that they've sworn to be, and they have that understanding, as well as the community member have an understanding that, okay, we're going to be here, we're going to be visible. So don't get upset when your son is stopped. These are the things that we have to do to reduce this violence. Now, one of the bigger issues, and I'll tell you a story. Last year, we had a forum with the police and survivors and community members. Well, the police expressed their frustration as to the community won't talk.
Right.
You may know who is doing what, but you won't say anything.
Yeah.
So they gave a very good definition of what snitching really is, whereas the community members and the people that were there really had no idea that snitching is when a defender or someone that's already in prison tell on someone else to get their sentence reduced. But when a community member calls the police and tell of someone doing something that's violent in their community or committing a crime in their community, that's called a community or a community member complaint. That's what that is. It's not snitching.
They also, Glenn, were able to work in 5 cities where moms were actually employed to deploy at a homicide site. As a consequence, it instilled trust between the police, and as a consequence, the number of closed cases increased in cities where we had the moms. So they are really establishing trust between the community, and as a consequence, more people are willing to disclose who the perpetrator was. And so that we're going to be expanding that and
Exactly.
doing some evaluation of that, but we hope to be investing in more chapters. So the more moms can get involved beyond just grieving, but part of dealing with that grief is to take action to prevent other moms from having to go through that. And that's an important part of the healing.
What happens is that every time I see a mom on the TV and she's just received the news that her child is dead and she's wailing, and that pain resonates within me.
I can imagine that it does.
So we have got to reduce this because it's just killing families. It's killing families because you just don't kill that one person. It destroys and breaks down that whole family.
Okay, I have to ask you this. Black mothers. So what role is race playing in the motivation of people who are a part of what you're doing? And forgive me, where are the fathers?
Oh my, it's a loaded question. Okay, so what happens is that we're the ones that's mostly affected. Black mothers. We're the ones that are mostly affected. Black fathers are on the scene, but afraid to be on the scene all at the same time.
But there are some hopeful signs. I know in one situation where there was this fighting in the school, I think it was in one southern town.
In Louisiana, wasn't
it?
Yeah,
Louisiana, where the dads came in and said, look, these are our kids fighting.
Yeah, they had a name, didn't they?
Yeah, dad's on the job, or
dad's on duty or something.
Dad's on duty. Dad's on duty. So, I just think what we've got to do is create hope in these communities and plant the seeds that the transformation and redemption of your community has to come from you. But there's so much attention devoted to the police, racism, external. But so part of our agenda is pushing. They put up billboards, Glenn, on Victims Week. They had other kind of activities to instill trust between the police, and there were some fathers involved in some of these active basketball teams and things like that. So.
Now, we're bringing the fathers in. We're not excluding the fathers whatsoever. We want to catapult the fathers and let them know that they're safe. That's the issue within the community.
Excuse me, safe from what?
From the community as a whole. They've been told by other organizations and activists, the black male, you're threatened and you're going to end up dying if you work with this one or that, the police, but that is not true. So we're dispelling that myth and let them know that you can work with law enforcement. They're not afraid of you, and you should not be afraid of them.
Let me make sure I understand. So Voices of Black Mothers United works with police. Mothers working with police. Fathers may be reluctant to affiliate because they fear that others will think that they have somehow collaborated with the police.
Exactly.
Yes. But we also have...
we got to dispel that.
Yeah, we're
Yes,
trying to
indeed.
dispel that. Another thing that we are connecting with, we have a group of we call the OGs. These are guys who spent a long time in prison, and we have a program in Washington, D.C., where we're funding them. And they said, well, if we can control this behavior in the prisons, we can control them outside. So they have come together, and they're doing a very effective job. If they were the ones, as I said in my presentation, they established a zone of peace in one of the most violent neighborhoods. For 100 days, we didn't have a single act of violence because of these OGs, we call them, old gangsters, who stepped up. So we look for healing agents within the community suffering the problem. And once you find them and you redirect them, they can be a powerful agent of transformation in these communities. That has always been our approach, to look for solutions in unusual places and seek to support unorthodox means of a changing behavior. But the healing, I look at these neighborhood leaders like Sylvia and others like healing agents. The human body is oriented towards health. The moment this injury, healing begins. Well, we really believe that healing can occur, and collectively, if we're able to do it, it can form an immune system. That's the only way I think but we have to invest in innovative people like Sylvia and others and challenge them to come up with the solutions that we then will support.
Sylvia?
Yes, when we're healing, when we're showing healing, we are the examples, right? If we, as Black mothers who've hurt, who's carried this child for 9 months and raised this child and given all we've got, right, to this child. And if we can look at our perpetrator, the murderer of our child, and say, I forgive you. If we can do that, if we do that as the example, and we do, we don't do it necessarily for that person. We do it for us. So it starts a healing chain. I know for my personal example, when I started to heal, my son started to heal. And when people within our network saw us feeling better, they started to feel better.
I guess, Glenn, one of the most surprising things that I witnessed as I've been interacting with these women is just the power of forgiveness. And we had a session that was moderated where the common theme was the importance of forgiving. One of them, this will blow your mind, man. She went on death row to meet the man who raped and killed her daughter.
At the age of 12.
The age of 12. And she said, I forgive you, and left scripture behind. She said, I didn't forgive him for him. I forgave him for me, because now I'm free of that. And so the challenge, if somebody, and these moms can forgive people for such heinous acts as taking their life, how can someone hate someone for something that happened 200 years ago?
You know, it sounds very Christian to me. Can I ask about the extent to which, if at all, religious faith plays a role in your ministry?
100%.
110%.
I don't think I would have made it. Okay, so the statistics, as Mr. Woodson mentioned earlier, 25% of mothers or parents die within the first 5 years. Okay?
God, that's an unbelievable
It
number.
is.
That pain is just so
It's called broken heart syndrome.
undescribable. Now, the other mom of the young lady that died with my daughter,
Yes.
she died.
I'm sorry.
And literally, they put on her death certificate, broken heart syndrome. I've heard about it before, but did not think it was real. But it's actually a real disease that you can die from.
Yeah.
We're approaching something like 20,000 homicides a year overall in the country, half of which are Black victims.
More than
So
half.
we are talking about unimaginable pain on an astronomical scale. My hat is really off to you.
Thank you. 92% of marriages fail.
Of our moms.
Yeah.
So what's on the agenda for you? Suppose you had an unlimited budget, and we're going to tell people how they can support the Woodson Center and Voices for Black Mothers United before we sign off. But what in your wildest dreams would you like to be able to do that you can't quite get done just yet?
Well, one of the things that we envision at the Woodson Center is to continue to reach out and enlist more moms. But also what we've done is reached out beyond Black mothers to look. We reached out to get race off the table. I think we must take race off the table if we are to deal with the real moral and spiritual freefall that is consuming our young people. So we reached out to mothers from Silicon Valley, white moms who lost their kids to homicides. The homicide rate among affluent white Silicon Valley households is 6 times the national average.
You mean suicide?
Suicide, I'm sorry, suicide. The suicide rate among wealthy parents, 6 times the national average. And in Appalachia, the leading cause of death is prescription drugs. And so what we've done, Sylvia did, is bring the leadership of other organizations from there. And Frank Luntz moderated a session, but we call them Mothers Consortium.
And we came together as a mother encounter because we wanted to show that we are all alike in a sense because we're bound by the same pain. Everything that another mother said in regards to having to bury her child was nothing different from what I've ever said. So we connected and we bonded as sisters by that pain. But we also connected and bonded because we want to see some solutions. All of those things overlap. Bullying comes from, the suicide can come from being bullied. The addictions start with some type of violence. So all of it overlaps.
One of the, when Cain slew Abel, his punishment was worse than death, and that is to wander the earth without content or purpose in life. And that's what's happening to a lot of our young people. They're wandering without content or purpose of your life, so they devalue their life. If you devalue your life, you'll take someone else's or you'll take your own. They're different sides of the same coin. And it was just amazing when we brought these moms together, the common ground that we would, but we're not going to be able to find answers to why this emptiness, this hole that's in the heart of our children, if we have to look at each other through the prism of race. Race prevents us from getting at this deeper challenge facing, and that is the moral and spiritual freefall that is destroying our children.
So what do you say, I have to ask you, to the Black Lives Matter movement of people concerned about race and about the police killings of unarmed Black men and women? What do you say to the mother of George Floyd? What do you say to the mother of Michael Brown, and so on? Is there any room within your movement for them?
Of course, we're concerned about anyone, but it should not be defined as the most critical problem that we face. it must be put in perspective. How many moms suffer deaths like this? Yeah, we would welcome them into the table.
Absolutely. Their pain is no different from my pain. It's just that who killed their son or their daughter, Sandra Bland, or Breonna Taylor.
Although she took her own life, Sandra Bland.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, Breonna Taylor.
Breonna Taylor. The only difference is who did it, okay? And how activists promote who did it and promote the negative part of what's happened. They didn't promote how a young black male, 24 years old, who that was his third time being charged with murder, killed Crystal and Taryn. They did not promote that. And to me, that's just as worthy as promoting than a white officer killing someone else. Sure. So I would love on those mothers, just like I do anyone else, because their pain is no different from mine. Our circumstances are different. That's it.
And some of these moms, the extent of the expanse of their forgiveness is just amazing to me. Some of them reach out to the to the parents of the murderers because they've lost their son too. Mm-hmm. They're going to prison for life.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And
there really have been communications.
They minister. Several of them minister to the young man in prison.
In prison.
My.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Several of them minister to these young men because they're lost. Their lives are lost.
And we have to understand what was it that made you do this? Because here again, that's part of our healing. And part of our healing, if we understand that, that helps us to minister to those on the street who may be thinking about doing that.
This was the biggest revelation when I got involved with it. What you talking about Christian faith? And I mean, the extent of which the level and extent of their faith is just breathtaking to me. And I think they have so much to teach the country about forgiveness and redemption and transformation.
Why is it that we don't hear, and correct me if I'm wrong, in the media, any talk about Christian faith as a vehicle for helping people get through these challenges? We hear so little about that in the media.
The question is how many outlets and how many different people want people to really get healed and get through? Or do you want the negative part, which will generate you ratings?
I mean, not that everybody is a Christian.
No,
I understand we live in a pluralistic society. But we're talking about black mothers in inner cities around this country who are largely Christian, if they have any religious faith at all.
I have mothers who are not, and that's okay. It's about being positive and promoting healthy and hope and love.
See, I tell people that what persuades people is experience will always prevail over an argument. Mm-hmm. You know, when Jesus came to the servants of John the Baptist came to him and said, "Are you the one? Do we seek another?" He healed in their presence and go tell them what you saw. And that's how I convince people who are non-religious, who want to bring me this Black Lives Matter piece. I said, well, just tell me how implementing what you suggest will improve the lives of somebody or would add value to a life. So that's the test. And so what impresses people is the secular consequence of one's faith. Not necessarily, you know, I said, but the fact that I'm a Christian is my hang up. But I can point to people who were drug addicts, who were predators, who are now clean or responsible citizens, or people who were predators, now ambassadors of peace, and now serving as a community. And if you ask that person, why did you change? And they say that I was saved by Christ. You don't have to be a Christian to appreciate that. I think Dennis Prager said it best. If you're coming riding down the street and you run out of gas at 11 o'clock at night and you got to go walk 2 blocks to a gas station and 10 men came around the corner, would you want to confront 10 who left the bar or 10 who left Bible study?
Well, that's not a hard question.
But Glenn,
But that's what I mean about that we can do with the secular consequence of one's faith. You don't have to be a Christian to appreciate that. And that's the kind of examples we have to present to people when we're trying to help them understand why these neighborhood-based programs like Sylvia works.
And when I talk to mothers, I don't push Christianity down their throats. I don't do that. I meet them where they are.
Do you guys pray together?
We do, if they feel comfortable. Yes, we do. But what I like to do with them is let myself be a testimony. Let myself show what restoration looks like. The mother may be at the point of where she's crawling because you can't stand up straight, because the pain is so hard. You can't get up. And I let them know I've been there, but look at where I am now. And if you choose to walk with me, you'll get to be where I am now.
So she proves that a witness is more powerful than an advocate. And experience will always prevail against an argument. And so what we're doing with resources, we're going to help fund other chapters around the country. We're also going to expand out to these other moms who lost their children to suicide and drugs. And to me, I think that's what's going to turn the nation away from race and focus the attention instead on the salvation of our children that are in crisis. Absolutely. That's what I'm hoping that we can replace it, Glenn.
Would you like to have the last word, Sylvia?
Yes. If you are, or if you know of someone who's out there that's experiencing this kind of pain, they may be at the point of where they don't feel like they can take another breath. Voices of Black Mothers United, we're here for you. And I promise you, I will stay on the phone with you as long as I need to. Just give us a call.
That's Sylvia Bennett Stone, Voices of Black Mothers United. Robert Woodson, founder and president of the Woodson Center. I'm so proud to be supporting your work. And I hope anyone who hears this program agrees that it's very much worthy of support. Thank you both.
Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome 2022 Bradley Prize.
All right. Okay, that's it.
Lowry.
That's it. Okay, that's the end of the conversation. Not a debate, the exchange of information. I'm glad I had an opportunity to hear it, to see it. It gives me a whole lot more respect for Robert Woodson. Robert, you're doing some great work. That is absolutely wonderful. It doesn't matter whether you're a conservative or a liberal. I tend to be on the liberal side with some things and some projects, but to learn forgiveness, to teach love, to teach that our folks can get some things done is very, 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 very important. Very, very important. There's a second half of this show. I don't know, Chris, can we lift up the second half? That part is over in terms of the dialogue, but there's a second piece.
Let me go back to it. Give me 2 seconds here, Rich.
Yeah, that was my fault. I should have lifted it, let you know that. If you can, if not, that's all right. We'll move forward.
It's just gonna be just give me about a minute here.
Not a problem. Not a problem. There's some things that decisions that have been lifted up by our conservative Justice Clarence Thomas, who lifts himself up as a Black conservative. They just knocked down the affirmative action program. The affirmative action program, which was trying to undo the racism and discrimination that exists within our society. And I may have told you that at one point, Governor Robert P. Casey was very, very strong on the whole civil rights movement and very strong on affirmative action. Affirmative action is a scientific method to try to bring about change. Okay, let's look at the second half of this thing and see what we can find. Thank you.
Thank you. A specter haunts the domestic political landscape in America today. It is the specter of racial conflict. The pundits tell us that we live in a period of racial reckoning in America. The anger and alienation amongst many Black Americans is palpable. Racial dispute suffuses our public life, from school committee elections to national political contest. This estrangement of journalists, politicians, intellectuals, and activists derives from the fact of persisting Black disadvantage across so many fronts in our country's economic and social life. The reality here is too familiar, too widely known to require elaborate recitation. Whether we talk about health or wealth, education or income, imprisonment or criminal victimization, the relatively disadvantaged status of those Americans who descend from slaves here in the third decade of the 21st century, more than 150 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, is clear for all to see. What are we to make of this? That question has bedeviled me for decades. Indeed, ever since I began graduate studies in economics at MIT a half century ago. So it is with a heavy heart that I stand before you this evening, a Black American economist in this era of racial discontent in my country, an Ivy League professor and a descendant of slaves, a beneficiary of a civil rights revolution now over 2 generations in the past, which has made possible for me a life that my ancestors could only have dreamed of. More than that, I am a patriot who loves his country. I'm a man of the West, an inheritor of its great traditions. As such, I feel compelled to represent the interest of my people here and now. However, that reference is not unambiguous. It has both communal and civic antecedents. But the civic obligations are prior to the communal ones. Racial disparities are real, of course, but just how important is race as such? Inequality in America is not mainly a racial issue. The many poor and marginalized white people deserve our concern too. Interracial marriage has grown dramatically, as has the number of people who view themselves as multiracial, including the first Black president and vice president of this country. Is race a fundamental difference between people, or is it a social construct? We talk incessantly about race and identity, but what about culture? What about values? Are these not aspects of our humanity that transcend race? The alienation afflicting so many prosperous Black Americans is the result, I believe, of the false narratives that folks are being told by demagogues and ideologues. Narratives about something called white supremacy and how it threatens them, about how we have, in effect, reverted to the era of Jim Crow. My work has sought to rebut these departures from reality, in part by looking at what has actually happened over the last 75 years. A Black middle class has emerged. There are Black billionaires. Our influence on American culture is stunning and has worldwide resonance. In fact, when viewed in global comparative perspective, we Black Americans are rich and powerful. We have, for instance, access to 10 times the per capita income of the typical Nigerian. The cultural barons and elites of America, the people who run the mainstream media, who give out literary prizes and foundation grants, who run the human resource departments of corporate America, the universities, the movie studios. These powerful people have bought into the woke anti-racism sensibility, hook, line, and sinker, all of which disproves the premise that the American dream does not apply to us Black people. To say so is to tell a lie to our children about their country, a crippling lie which, when taken as gospel, robs our people of agency and a sense of control over our fate, and a patronizing lie that portrays profound doubt about the ability, our ability, to face up to the responsibilities and to bear the burdens of our freedom. For that is the existential challenge we Black Americans now face in the 21st century. Not to throw off the shackles of our oppression, but rather to take up the awesome burdens of freedom. The Civil War left 600,000 dead in a country of 30 million. The consequence of that war, together with the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments enacted just afterwards, was to make the enslaved Africans and their descendants into citizens. In the fullness of time, we have become equal citizens. Now, that should not have taken another 100 years, nor should my ancestors have been enslaved in the first place. But here's the thing.
Chris?
Slavery was a commonplace human practice dating back to antiquity.
We're down to the end of the show. So I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to do the whole thing. First of all, thank you so much for listening in. I was in the middle of telling you something about Clarence Thomas. I'm really ashamed to have a Black man on the Supreme Court that is a ridiculous fool when it comes to doing things for people and all people. But that's a whole different kind of issue. He considered himself a conservative, but if he was the kind of conservative that Robert Wilson is, he certainly would not be trying to destroy people's lives. Thank you again. God bless, and may heaven smile upon you. See you next week. This is Richard James signing off. Take care. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you again for tuning in to the Richard James Show. Our African and our African American programs are set up to educate you on what's going on in this world. We thank you for taking out the time to listen. Let's hear from you sometime also. So this is your neighbor and your friend signing off. Until I see you again next week and hear from you again next week. So long. God bless.